At 82, I've learned countless lessons about life, but there's one decision I deeply regret: moving into a nursing home. At the time, it felt like the right choice. My family encouraged me, assuring me that I would receive all the care and comfort I needed. I believed them. But once I got there, I realized that the reality was nothing like I had imagined. If you're considering this option, whether for yourself or a loved one, maybe you think it's the safest choice, or you've been told it will make life easier. But before you take that step, I want to share 6 things I wish someone had told me before I moved in. Because the truth is, life in a nursing home isn't just about convenience. It changes everything. And once you go in, getting out isn't as simple as you might think. Stay with me until the end, because some of these lessons may surprise you. And if you know someone who's thinking about a nursing home, this video might be exactly what they need to hear before making a life-changing decision. If you're finding this video relatable and you're going through what I'm talking about, comment 1 below to let me know you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you helpful health tips every day. Now let's get started. Regret 1: losing my independence. The hardest shock after moving into a nursing home wasn't the small room, the rigid meal times, or even the unfamiliar faces around me. It was the overwhelming realization that I had lost control over my own life. Before moving in, I had a rhythm to my day. I decided when to wake up, when to eat, and how I spent my time. I could go for a walk whenever I felt like it, cook my own meals, or simply sit in my favorite chair, lost in a book. But once I arrived at the nursing home, it hit me like a wave. My time was no longer mind control. Everything followed a strict schedule, one that didn't belong to me. Breakfast arrived at the same time every day, whether I was hungry or not. Lights out was enforced at a set hour, regardless of whether I was ready to sleep. Want to go outside for a walk? You might need permission, and you'll likely have to wait for someone to be available to help. Suddenly, the simplest decisions, what to eat, what to wear, felt like luxuries rather than rights. I vividly remember my first week, waking up in a bed that didn't feel like mine. I stretched, reached for the book I had been reading at home, but as I looked around the sterile room, I was hit with the stark truth. This wasn't my home. My books, my favorite chair, the small comforts that had made my life mine were gone. In their place were cold, white walls and a bed I hadn't chosen. The unsettling feeling that I wasn't in charge of my life anymore refused to leave. The hardest realization? Once you surrender your independence, getting it back feels almost impossible. You adjust because you have to. You stop questioning when they tell you what's for dinner. You stop asking if you can take a walk whenever you want. You learn to fit into their system. But along the way, you lose pieces of yourself. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you truly ready to give up the small freedoms that make life your own? Because once they're gone, you'll realize just how much they meant to you, more than you ever thought possible. Regret 2: struggling to maintain personal hobbies and passions. One of the biggest challenges I didn't anticipate when moving into the nursing home was how difficult it would be to continue the activities that once brought me joy. At home, I had the freedom to immerse myself in my hobbies, whether it was painting, reading, or even gardening in the backyard. These small joys gave my life color and meaning. But here, in the nursing home, those passions felt like distant memories. At first, I told myself that I would find a way to adjust. I would continue to read, maybe even start a new project. But it wasn't that simple. The environment here, though well-intentioned, didn't encourage personal growth. The schedules were rigid, the space was limited, and there was little room for a quiet, uninterrupted time to focus on things I loved. I watched as others, too, slowly gave up their once cherished hobbies. George, the retired carpenter I mentioned earlier, had spent years building and fixing things. But in the nursing home, there were no tools, no projects, nothing for him to create. Without something to work toward, something to nurture, he began to withdraw, and I couldn't help but feel the same creeping sense of loss. I found myself missing those little things, like spending hours lost in a book or tending to my garden. Now, I had so little time to do what I enjoyed, and when I tried, I realized how little energy I had left for the things that once made me feel alive. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you be able to continue the passions that make life meaningful to you? Because once you give them up, you may find it harder to reconnect with them than you ever thought possible. Regret 3, feeling forgotten. One of the most painful truths about moving into a nursing home is the crushing realization that the world outside keeps on turning without you. When I first arrived, my family reassured me that they would visit often. I believed them. In the beginning, they did. My daughter came by once a week, and my grandchildren visited on weekends. For a little while, it felt like I still had a thread connecting me to my old life. But as the months passed, the visits grew less frequent. My daughter started calling instead of coming. My grandchildren, caught up in school and work, slowly faded from my days. Holidays were the hardest. Everyone promised they'd come, but plans always seemed to change at the last minute. And before I knew it, I was sitting alone in a common room, watching the other residents stare at the door, hoping, wishing that today might be the day someone would remember them. It wasn't that my family stopped loving me. It was just that life had a way of getting in the way. When you're not around every day, it's easy for people to assume you're fine, that you're adjusting, that you don't need as much attention. But the truth is, the longer you stay in a nursing home, the more easily people forget just how much you still need them. I remember one evening, sitting in my room, holding my phone, wrestling with myself over whether to call my son. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to remind him that I was still here, waiting for a visit that might never come. So I put the phone down, and that's when it hit me. This was my life now. The days blurred together, spent in a quiet hope that someone, anyone, would remember to reach out, to include me. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, are you truly prepared for the loneliness? Because no matter how much your family loves you, once you're out of sight, it's all too easy to slip out of their minds. If you're still with me and find these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another video. Let's move on. Regret 4, losing my sense of purpose. When I first moved into the nursing home, I thought I was simply changing my address. I never realized I was about to lose the very reason I got out of bed every morning. At home, I had responsibilities that gave my day structure. I had routines, hobbies, and most importantly, I had a purpose. Even the smallest tasks, watering the plants, brewing my coffee, tidying up my space, brought me a sense of accomplishment. But in the nursing home, all those little rituals faded away. Meals were prepared for me, cleaning was done by others, and my plants, they were no longer mine to care for. At first, I convinced myself that it would be nice to finally relax. No more chores, no more responsibilities, just peace. But after a few weeks, something began to feel deeply wrong. The days dragged on, empty and long, filled with nothing but waiting. I saw it in others too. People who had once been full of life now spent their days sitting, staring, waiting for time to pass. There was George, 84 years old, who had spent his life as a carpenter. At home, he was always building, fixing, creating. But here, there were no tools, no projects, nothing for him to do. I watched as his spirit slowly withered. His hands, once so skilled, now rested idle in his lap. I feel useless, he told me one day, and I felt the weight of his words in my heart. When you no longer have something to care for, something to work toward, life begins to lose its meaning. Your mind slows, your body follows, and soon you start to feel like just another nameless resident in a place where time passes. But nothing truly changes. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, what gives your life meaning? Because once you move in, finding purpose isn't as simple as filling your time. It's about holding on to the things that make you feel alive, that remind you there's more to life than simply existing. Regret 5, declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into the nursing home, I was in good health for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could still care for myself, take walks, and cook my own meals. I had my routines, grocery shopping, stretching every morning, and walking around my house to keep my legs strong. But once I moved in, everything changed. At first, It felt like I was just taking it easy. No more cooking, no more rushing around. Meals were brought to me, and if I needed anything, I could just press a button and someone would come to help. But what I didn't realize was that with every little thing someone else did for me, I was losing strength. I stopped moving as much, and soon my legs grew stiffer. I spent more time sitting, and before I knew it, getting up from a chair became a struggle. The muscles I had worked so hard to maintain for years were fading away faster than I could have ever imagined. And it wasn't just me. I watched others go through the same thing. People who used to walk on their own were suddenly relying on wheelchairs. Those who had once been independent now needed help with the simplest tasks. The more help we received, the more we seemed to need it. I remember my neighbor, Alice, an 81-year-old woman who was full of life when she first arrived. She would take daily walks around the facility, insisting that age wouldn't slow her down. But a few months later, I noticed she wasn't walking as much. Then she started using a walker. Soon after, she was in a wheelchair. One day, she turned to me and said, "I don't know what happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in just a few months." And she was right. When you stop using your body, you start losing it. And in a place like this, where everything is designed to make life more convenient, it's easy to forget that movement isn't just about comfort. It's about survival. If I had known how quickly I would lose my strength, I would have fought harder to stay active, to keep moving, even on days when I didn't feel like it. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you still have the motivation to keep your body strong when everything is arranged to make life easier? Because once you've slowed down, getting back up isn't as easy as you might think. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating valuable content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Regret 6, the loss of privacy and dignity. One of the things I never fully grasped before moving into a nursing home was just how much privacy I would lose. At home, I had my own space, my sanctuary. I could close my bedroom door, sit in silence if I wanted, and live life on my own terms. But in a nursing home, privacy becomes a distant memory, a luxury you don't always get to keep. From the moment I stepped inside, it felt like I was under constant surveillance. Staff coming in and out, routine room checks, and shared spaces where you're hardly ever alone. Even the most personal moments, getting dressed or using the bathroom, often required someone else's presence. I knew they were just doing their jobs, but accepting help for things I had done on my own for years was humbling, to say the least. I remember my first week, struggling with the reality that I had to ask for permission to do things that were once second nature. Want to take a shower? You might have to wait for someone to help. Need to use the restroom? Sometimes pressing the call button means waiting longer than you'd like. Even simple choices, like what to eat, felt limiting. If I didn't like the meal options of the day, well, it didn't matter. And then there was the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and sharing a space with someone you didn't choose can be difficult. I was fortunate to have a kind roommate, but I heard other stories of roommates who were loud, unclean, or had cognitive issues that made sleep nearly impossible. No matter how much I tried to make my room feel like home, it never truly felt like mine. Losing my dignity was something I didn't expect. It's hard to explain how much of it slips away until you're already deep in it. When people knock but don't wait for an answer before coming in, when you're addressed like a patient instead of a person, when your daily routines are dictated by a schedule you never created, it changes you. You start to feel less like yourself and more like just another name on a list. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you ready to give up the privacy and control you've held your entire life? Because once it's gone, getting it back is harder than you could ever imagine. Regret 7. Realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I convinced myself it was just temporary. I thought I'd give it a try, see how it went. And if I didn't like it, I could always leave. But what I didn't realize was just how much harder it would be to leave once I was inside. At first, it felt like an easy decision. If I didn't like it, I'd just return home. But home wasn't the same anymore. It sat empty, and keeping it up from afar was a struggle. My children had already started making changes, selling off things they thought I wouldn't need, even discussing renting out the place. When I mentioned the idea of returning, they hesitated. Are you sure you can manage on your own? Wouldn't it be safer to stay? We just want what's best for you. And then there was the reality of my own physical decline. After months of living in a place where I didn't have to cook, clean, or even walk much, I wasn't as strong as I used to be. The independence I once had was slipping away, making the thought of moving back home seem harder than I ever imagined. I wasn't as confident in my ability to live on my own anymore, and that fear kept me stuck. I met others who had the same experience, thinking they'd just give the nursing home a try, only to find that leaving wasn't as easy as they thought. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to adjust to life outside. Some people even lost the option entirely once their homes were sold or their savings drained by the high cost of care. There was no going back. That's the part nobody tells you. Moving feels like a choice you can reverse, but for most people, it isn't. The nursing home becomes your whole world. And before you know it, the life you once knew outside starts to feel like a distant memory. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the reality that leaving might not be as simple as you think? Because once you settle in, the barriers to leaving, whether financial, physical, or emotional, can be harder to overcome than you expect. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating valuable content to inform and inspire you. Looking back, I don't regret growing older, but I do regret thinking that a nursing home was my only option. I walked in hoping for comfort, safety, and an improved quality of life. But what I found was a reality that gradually stripped away my independence, my privacy, my sense of purpose, and even my identity. Does that mean nursing homes are all bad? Not necessarily. For some, they provide the care they truly need. But before you make that choice, take a moment to reflect on what you're giving up. Because once you step in, life will never be the same. If I could go back, I would have fought harder to stay in my own home. I would have explored other ways to get help without losing my freedom. And I would have made sure I truly needed to make such a permanent change before taking that step. If you're facing this decision right now, I urge you to ask yourself, is this truly what's best for me, or am I choosing the easier path right now? Because the life you have today, your routines, your independence, your freedom to make choices, is worth holding on to for as long as you can. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share one thing you've learned today and how you plan to use it in your own life. Your thoughts are incredibly important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us the motivation and encouragement to keep creating content that can inform and inspire you.